This is Remote Daily, your daily dose of inspiration.
Our guest today has devoted her life to closing the gender gap in the workplace, advocating for women worldwide, and has been breaking glass ceilings all along the way. She's an internationally renowned thought leader, a movement maker, and a champion of equality. She just said in the green room she lives on United Airlines because she's really all over the place as the CEO of the Female Quotient, working with Fortune 500 companies and impact organizations to advance equality in the workplace. The Female Quotient has something that some of you might have seen called the Equality Lounge, which is really popping up all over the world, especially since we're now getting more in person together again. Before, it has been virtual everywhere, every day, and has created an international community of women rising up to catalyze change. And she, our guest, is a proud mentor to women all around the world. And I'm so happy, so honored to have her here in the room today with a wrestling belt in her background and a Californian sun in her heart. Please welcome Shelley Zalis. Shelley, such an honor.
Wow, I am so excited to be here, and thank you for having me here.
How are you feeling today, Shelley?
You know what? I feel so good. I feel I feel grateful. I feel really grateful to be surrounded by so much love and people that I know are giving back and paying it forward with generosity every single day.
We are always asking our guest, Shelley, to bring a question to the audience here in the room, out there on the streams. And we were working with your terrific team on this, and we came up with, I think, a really deep and a big question for all of you today to reply to, which is, how would you describe your ideal equitable workplace? This is what Shelley, this is what the Female Quotient would like to know from all of you. So look at the question in the chat and let us know in the chat what you think. How would you describe your ideal equitable workplace? As always, Dario is helping you think a little bit. And while I see you typing, I'm gonna ask you, Lisa, because you have spent part of your life on this question. If you would have to put it down into a tweet, what would you say?
Well, it's two things in particular. One, and we're talking about my ideal equitable workplace, is where cannabis is included and not judged. It's not, people don't think you're not going to get your work done or that you're a slack off. It's known to be a change agent for some of us to actually get things done. So, some laxness around cannabis, for sure. That is my number one. Number two, which actually should be my number one, is when the least of us are paid the same, we all win. So, and I'm doubly sure Shelley knows these and probably goes around yelling this at everybody, where it's like, white women make 70 cents to the dollar. Black women is 60 something cents to the dollar. Hispanic women is 52 cents to the dollar. And I think when that number is the one that's the loudest number, that's when we would have really reached some true equitability in the workplace. So that's my number one. Cannabis is number two.
Anne kicked us just off in the chat saying, measure only by results, not the who, how, when, and where. Transparency, trust-based, result-oriented. And Heidi saying, for me, it's all about having physical, emotional, and conversational space. And welcome back, Heidi, all the way from Alaska, to acknowledge the fullness of each person. So it's not just about productivity, but ensuring that the conditions of work stay connected to us as humans. Work versus robots. And Eleanor and Daria also bring up prioritizing transparency and communication. Each voice is considered taken seriously. And Deborah, who helps so many people around the world finding work, getting into positions, and has managed leaders in executive search for such a long time, says, for me, we're all different kinds of people are represented at all levels in the org. That is the goal that you sign up for, Shelley. When you look at the chat, Shelley, what stands out to you?
Well, first of all, I love all of these comments. And I think the reality is, if women's voices were represented in the workplace as they should be, we would be creating the equitable workplace that it should be. And so if we created a workplace for women, we would be creating a workplace for everyone, number one. And someone said something so true the other day. If we had equality in the workplace, who would be taking care of our children at home? Which is such a great point, because childcare is such a big challenge for us. And as Lisa said, and I just want to say, women in general, 80 cents on the dollar, Black women, 64 cents on the dollar, Latina women, 53 cents on the dollar. Like, what? And then we talk about unconscious bias. Unconscious, if you use the word unconscious, you're conscious. So the fact that we keep using this word, it's unconscious, is ridiculous. We are very conscious of the gaps in the workplace. So let's start talking about the fact that we're conscious. Once conscious, it's all about choice. Do we choose to close the gaps or not? So we all are aware. Once aware, it's choice. So it is time to close the gaps, to close the pay gaps, to close the pipeline gaps, to close the benefit gaps, and make it an equitable workplace. And let's make it an equitable workplace for gender, for race, for age, for all of us, so that we can all thrive and succeed, period. That's equal. And equal is equal. It's not a quarter. It's not, a third. It's equal.
Shelley, preparing for this session, we found this interview with you in Worth magazine, which is just one of the many, many outlets that have come to you over the years. But this one is a little more personal, I find. And one thing that really stood out to us was that you say in this interview that you were growing up and you were actually aiming to be a full-time mom. You were not looking at the professional world and saying, well, I want this like picture book business career. And then you graduated from Barnard and you got a job in marketing. And then you had this kind of pivotal moment where you realized, wait a second, there's something here that makes me make my own rules and that needs me to go and to take a different path. Can you tell us about this moment in your life where things sort of shifted for you?
Yeah, it's so funny because, first of all, I love Worth magazine. And when they interviewed me, I really, I always tell the truth. And, I never make up these stories. And I really always thought, and I respect full-time moms completely. I actually think it is harder to be a full-time mom than a CEO in Fortune 500. And I just look at my mom, when she raised me, she was a stay-at-home mom until we were all, she was PTA president and head of all these foundations and non-for-profits and stuff. But I always thought that to carpool and take care of kids is really a full-time job. How do you do it all? It's the biggest question. How do you have a full-time job? And especially if your husband is working, who's going to take care of the kids? That was always the question. And my mom raised her kids. And when we got out of the house is when she started working. And all of my friends were, for the most part, stay-at-home moms. And so I really did think that once I had children, I was going to do the same thing. And then and when I started working before I was married and before I had kids, I had a job to make money. And my husband was in medical school, was a fellow, and we needed a double income. Mm-hmm. And I never thought, I was working until midnight. In the olden days, I'm turning 60 in March. So in the old days, we didn't have computers. It was, paper, pencil, it was a lot. We didn't have online shopping. It was a very different day and age. And we all worked in cubicles and we worked long hours. Like, how was I going to raise a family? And so I thought, once I had kids, I was going to leave the workplace and be a full-time mother, for sure. And then I really had this true epiphany that, well, it really started with my first review. And I had a terrible review. I mean, I came in early, I stayed late, I did everything everybody did. And I had all male bosses. And I thought that I was perfect. I really did. I thought I was going to get this raise and promotion and that they were going to tell me how amazing I was. And of course, it was a 10-page, typewritten review. And I walk in the door and sit down with a big smile on my face, thinking he was going to tell me how phenomenal I was. And the first 3 lines were very nice. I was smart. I was talented, blah, blah, blah. I was kind. I was, all that. And then the rest ripped me to shreds, that I push people out of their comfort zone. I say yes to clients. I have too many client lunches. That surprised me. And, all the rest. And I remember looking at my boss thinking, I'm supposed to sign the review that I accept all of his comments and agree. Or I'm supposed to not agree, which would not have been good for my career. And I really needed this job and to support my husband. And I looked at my boss and I said, gosh, you are so terribly wrong. I said, and you just made the biggest mistake of your life. And I said, relationships are the most important, part of a job. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. You want me just to sit at my desk and be an order taker? Too many client lunches. That's when you get to know people. I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, and pushing people out of their comfort zone. I said, these were really good ideas for clients that they had. Of course, we have to listen to the client. How am I supposed to agree with you? And it was that moment that I realized, why am I always going to be wrong? If I have to keep agreeing with my boss, then I am never going to be right. And I need to be the boss. And if I'm never going to be the boss, then I'm going to have to keep following these rules. I'm going to have to keep working until midnight, even though none of us are doing anything. We're just pushing papers and just being goody two-shoes. But none of this makes any sense. And that was the moment of truth where I decided I am going to leave this corporate world. I am going to break every rule. This is when I became chief troublemaker. I am going to leave the job when I'm done. And unless I become my own boss and make my own rules, I am never going to be able to thrive in the workplace. And I'm never going to be able to raise a family and also be an employee. So I decided to become my own boss and be the chief troublemaker and no longer be the exception to the rule, but become the new norm. And that I can have a family and a career if I make my own rules. And that was a moment of truth, that I didn't need to be a stay-at-home complete mom. I could be a CEO if I made my own rules. And that was my moment of truth. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I decided that I was going to create this uncorporate culture, break all the rules that made no sense, create the new ones, that we can do it all. We can work, we can have a family, as long as we do it all our way. We can thrive at home and in the workplace. And you know what? That's how you can do it. There is no such thing as balance. It's not 50-50. Life isn't so neat. You do need to life stage accommodate along the way, whole other conversation. And that's just the way it was. And then I ended up attracting all of these amazing people, breaking every rule that made no sense, writing the new ones, and starting a whole new trend of stop sneaking out for your kids' soccer games, leave. And you still get your shit done, but you do it your way. And your way is the right way. And once you start breaking a pattern, everyone else starts following and it becomes the new pattern. Mm-hmm. And you really don't miss a beat. You create the new one. And that was the epiphany. And
wow.
Hello, here we are.
And that was 20 years ago when you left the corporate world and you founded Online Testing Exchange, which was this company that became one of the fastest growing research companies in the world before you embarked on this Female Quotient journey. And that was, I think, 7 years ago. So it is clearly successful, what you just described. And it's so amazing to learn about your story. Now, from your team, when we talked about what is the topic that Shelley is going to want to talk about, they said the messy middle. And there was just a report out by Wall Street Journal that said middle managers are at a breaking point for various reasons. So it's not even it's not even a topic anymore. It's a much larger systemic issue that we're looking at. What is it for you? How would you describe this messy middle, and why are you so interested in talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, the messy middle is really the point of, where we are losing most women in the workplace. It's where women are, for the most part, having children. It's that moment of truth where when you have children, one of three things happen. You either opt in, but you rise to the top and you have the work-life balance issues, right? That becomes a challenge. Or you opt out completely because you decide to raise your children, or you leave and then stay away for a while and then come back in, and it's very hard to re-enter. Or a lot of women leave and start their own companies. You've got, different choices to make. So the messy middle is truly where, entry level, we start 50-50. That's not really the issue. We get to leadership at less than 17%. So where we're losing most women is in middle management. It's the messy middle. And that's where the pipeline is broken. It's where we have the leaky pipeline. And when you look at, especially in the pandemic, where we see this great resignation, we are losing more women than ever before. More than 2 million women have left the workplace just since spring. And so this is our biggest challenge, is the messy middle. How do we retain women to get to leadership? And that's where we have the broken rung for the most part. So for me, it's the greatest opportunity is the retention. How do we go from the great resignation to the great retention? It's the messy middle. And a lot of it is solving some of the greatest challenges today, which to me is the opportunity, the flexibility, the remote work, the childcare, and creating this culture of belonging for everyone, and not just making it the exception for women, but making it, something that everyone would thrive. But thinking about the opportunities, especially around women, where they no longer feel like they're just that exception with the bias barriers that kick in, but making it something that everyone can participate in.
Lisa, this reminds me of something that you just told me a few days earlier, which you said that Black women have been experiencing these exact changes and have been actually pioneering in becoming independent, starting companies, kind of like ahead of the tide. Is this what you were just about to tap in on?
So and I was also gonna just talk about like the other things that make the middle just so messy, and it kind of calls into question the whole entire system as a whole, and why there is a need for a middle, and the root of the hierarchical structures. I think is another conversation people are not ready to have, because it starts with the foundation of how America was founded and how capitalism came to prevalence in a system due to slavery. So that's like another thing that's going to have to be one of those, hey, now that we know this, we're going to have to question this whole system at large. So in 2007, a study came out that Black women were the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. And what wasn't a coinciding study, you know what I'm trying to say, was Black women were also leaving their jobs at alarming rates because we couldn't do the corporate 9-to-5, the flexibility isn't a factor, among all the other reasons why it's hard for us to work at a place. Really quick, want to do a commercial for Shelley that she probably didn't know what I was going to do, but on March 15th, they're going to have a twist, locks, braids, and knots, protecting Black women in the workplace, Twitter spaces. I'm excited for that conversation. I'm going to join that. But it's this idea of, so I'm a single mom, right? And so when you think about taking care of a child unpartnered and working, when I have to take my child to school, and the kid gets off at 3:00, there is no 9-to-5 I can take. So that severely reduces my opportunity to even enter into the pipeline to be elevated. So if I make it through that, once the middle is applied, there's so many things, even if you are a person that's just like down with corporate and you love meetings and you love to do it, there's only so much you're going to be able to do, where those relationships that you're building outside of work is virtually non-existent for you. You can't do that. I don't know if many like single mom, corporate hangs, let's take care of our kids and talk about, work. That's not really a thing. And for me, the messy middle is like, how do we combat that in the retention and what keeps them when the whole structure itself is so inherently flawed and doesn't lean itself towards who created the system?
Okay. So, oh God, we have so much to
I know,
talk
I just said a lot. I know.
No, but everything you're saying, Lisa, is so incredibly important and exactly what we have to talk about. And on March 23rd, and Felix, we're going to get to this, we are going to be hosting the largest global conversation with women all over the world. And this is the biggest challenge. It's like the whole world agenda and the corporate agenda has been made by men for men, with women not at the table. And this is the problem. Like, the rules of the workplace were made by men for men over 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Hello? Like, how are we even having these conversations? And so we will be having the largest conversation. It's going to be called Let's Talk. Let's talk about menopause. Let's talk about caregiving. Let's talk about flexibility. We're making these rules, but not even contextualizing the implications of how to deploy them in a way that's actually going to work, right? So we're all going to put the plan in place because we know what we need to be talking about. So when you're talking about being a single parent, right, and having to pick up your kids at 3 p.m, like, how does that work, right? Mm-hmm. And if women are always the exception, they're always going to be discriminated against. There's always going to be that bias barrier, right? So imagine if we created a new rule where everyone in the company could create their own 40-hour work week, mm-hmm. right? With some non-negotiable hours, which are team meetings that are non-negotiable, right? But everyone does that. So you are not the one that is, oh, Lisa's the exception because she has to go pick up her kids, right? But everyone could make their own work week. So if you want to work 5 to 7 in the morning and 11 to 1 and 9 to 11 at night, but you're going to get your work done, you don't have to justify going at 3 p.m. That's going to work, by the way, right? So we're working on a whole bunch of new little tools that I think are going to go a long way to moving from the Great Resignation to the Great Retention. Because you know what? We know what what parents need. I don't even want to use a gender because, I hate when we say male allies. We need male allies. No, we need leadership allies. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I don't want to give men more power. Leadership allies. And parents might not be, caregiving is still predominantly by default women, but let's not put it in that category. Let's not make it a gender thing.
But that was actually going to be my follow-up question, because you create all these spaces now for people to converse on this, for peer-to-peer mentorship. You mentor yourself, and it's lounges, it's dinners. You are having this amazing event coming up on March 23rd, and this is at the core of what you do. But how do you mentor or coach the ones who have not understood this yet? And how do you do that, especially when they're leaders and when they're not female? Like, how do you make them understand that this is where the problem lies and what they can do about it? How do you lead that conversation?
First of all, I don't care what gender. It's about conscious. I am about conscious leadership. Leadership is not about age, it's about action. So I don't care, what it is, it's about conscious leadership to me. And, I think that is what is so incredibly important. And, we see the numbers, so it's about measurement, it's about accountability. We know that women are leaving the workplace in droves. And, we have to change that. And so, the way to create change is also to stop talking about the problems. It's to stop talking about what you're going to do, and it's about doing something. And we need to do things that are different. And even with women of color, so many microaggressions were happening pre-pandemic, and they have stopped. Why? Because women have been working it from home. But you know what? We're going back to office. So you think that the problems are not going to reoccur? Of course they are. So these are not things we can ignore. We have to have transparency. We have to have conversations. We have to be opening up, the conversations and dealing with the solutions and creating, new ways of working and, creating the environments for open conversations and talking about these things. Can't just push them under the rug. This is how we will create the change that is necessary and that will create, the work spaces, the workplaces that we need to see, and to make sure that single parents like Lisa are going to be able to pick up her children and also be able to thrive and get to leadership levels inside of, organizations. We need to do this. And, so we are having conversations that will lead to actions with conscious leaders and making sure those conscious leaders are listening to hear and listening to, to respond. And those are the ones that will be rewarded accordingly, which is to be able to attract and retain the best talent and women inside of their organizations.
So before I pass it back to you, Lisa, just to understand, Shelley, so you say the leaders that, you won't convince every leader who hasn't understood this, but rather look for the ones that are conscious and go and start with those, because those will be the ones that will get the people anyway, and will have natural attraction for talent, while the others will probably lose out. And Eileen just put this in the chat, that the last 2 years probably helped this this shift to occur. But Lisa, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say a comment and a question. It's so sad that it took a global pandemic, first of all, for people to realize that work can be done differently. So before the pandemic, now while I am an actor by trade, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I dabbled in corporate until I was like, oh my goodness, I can't survive here. I can't thrive here. But while I was there, I noticed things about myself that made me a candidate less likely to even be able to work in an office environment. So we're looking at some sensory things where it's like low light is best, or sometimes people who are sensory sensitive can't be around like a lot of loud noises and clickety clacking. That's all they're going to hear, and they're going to go crazy. So I would lobby for remote work, and going to the office never really made much sense to me if we were not working together, but just showing up to a place to work independently. I was confused. So I know that's part of the equation of the Great Resignation, which is people saying, oh, no, I did this job at home. And so for me to go to your office is going to cost me more money in commute and maybe lunch or whatever. I'd rather not, and just find another job where I can work from home. So that's a comment that is just, it took not the global pandemic, it made the globe way less because that's how much death happened. And I think it's so sad that that's what it took for people to begin to understand that work can be done differently. So I just wanted to have a space to say that. Question about in getting companies and leaders to understand this. I've come up against this when I was consulting and having to show people the numbers behind why they need to make these decisions. And sometimes that's kind of disheartening too, where it's like, okay, let me show you how you're going to make money by promoting Susie. How do you deal with those people? And for those listening who aren't aware, like more diverse teams, sometimes it may take a little longer to get to the end result, but the end result will always be more profitable. That's been proven. How do you deal with those people in terms of, do you work with those people who just need that bottom line information? Or for me, it was about, if the leader has to get it this way, fine. I'm still worried about the workplace and those people, but it was still frustrating dealing with those men in leadership who needed to see that they would make more money if they made these moves. How do you handle that?
And I just shared some stats here from the Female Quotient website just to support what you said, Lisa, in terms of what can you show as numbers.
Yeah.
Shelley, back to you.
Yeah, listen, we've all seen the data, and I think that we've seen it play out, and we show the numbers over and over and over again. I can't seem to show them enough because, it's reinforcing what we already know, but we have the data that proves the success. And it's not just the financial success that we know. We know that it also, by the way, makes the connections in the companies and it's not just the bottom line performance of the financials, but it's also the way teams are performing. And people are leaving companies not just for money, but for purpose and value. And the ESGs, which is becoming incredibly important. So it's the overall success of a company. And if you want to attract and retain the best talent, it's not just about the bottom line of ROI, return on investment. It's ROI, return on impact, that also matters. And women are incredibly valuable when it comes to the purpose and value of a company, in terms of those successes. And, one of the things that we also have found is if you truly want diversity of thought, so, when you have diversity of age, gender, race, and all of that at the table, it does contribute to the diversity of mindset. Obviously, that's why you have it. Don't just hire 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I think it's a 3-to-1 ratio. Hire 3 of everyone at every level so that you have that belonging. People feel connected. Think about the strategy of hiring, or else you're still going to have that only and lonely, at every level. Bring the pack everywhere you go. And think of it, be thoughtful and intentional. And even resumes, like at every stage, it really is not complicated. Mm-hmm. Changing color, changing gender is not hard. It's actually quite easy if you are intentional about what you're doing. There is so much amazing talent out there. If you are intentional about the hiring that you're doing and change the questions you ask, like I hire for passion, train for skill, period. I don't even look at resumes. I think they're silly. We hire the wrong kind of people when you look at the resume. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to rethink a hiring process, who's on the hiring team, looking at resumes, the questions that we ask, they're dumb, hire for heart and you will hire the right kind of people, right? So I think we have to rethink all the different steps, and it's not that complicated. And then we will start getting the best people. And especially now with remote and all these opportunities. And while we say, gosh darn it, it took the pandemic to get there, I'm saying, hell yeah. The pandemic opened up some really terrible things, like it's horrible what has happened. And yet on the other hand, okay, hell yeah, at least we're here now. And we have a clean slate. And let's not just retrofit. And we better not just go back to old ways. We better get rid of the junk in the trunk, clean out the old shit, and let's use this as a new opportunity to open our minds, refresh, reimagine, and use this to make a big difference. And, this is our moment to do great stuff. And I'm so excited about this, And I think that diversity by design gives us so much opportunity to hire the right kind of people with freedom to not have to do it by location, and to have like moms that could be working remotely, such a big opportunity right now.
Shelley, I'm going to screen share one more thing here, which is the Female Quotient Equity Index, because I think it's really interesting that you offer companies tools to, to drive inclusion and representation. And I wonder, when you think about the future of this, your second big community and company that you have built. And you told us in the beginning, part of your business is also very much showing up to, so the lunches that you were, reviewed for badly, you have taken that to another global level, and you also give out these tools to companies. When you look at 10 years from now, let's say 2032, let's create our own little utopia here for a moment. What would have to happen so you say Female Quotient was a success all around?
You know what? I'm never going to be status quo. So we keep going, but you got to measure what matters. And I never want anyone to be able to not hold themselves accountable. So all these tools are free tools. I'm the co-founder of See Her. If you could see her, you could be her. So we also have accountability in advertising and entertainment. So we created the GEM score, the gender equality measure, measurement for pay equity and for DE&I in general to see where you are. So, 100 is average. We can always be better and better and better. So to always be able to be better than what we expect. So average is never good enough. And for me, 10 years from now, I hope that we are not asking ourselves the question of what equal is. It just should be the new standard. I really do hope that the question is, when I'm sitting on a panel, we're not asking the question of how do you do it all of just women. The same should be of men. How do you do it all? I hope that it's shared responsibility in the home, which will lead to more shared responsibility and accountability in the workplace. And equal is equal.
And based on the past 2 years, are you hopeful that this is going to be the case?
I definitely. I think more representation in the boardroom, more representation in the workplace, conscious leadership. I think that I think employees should all feel satisfied at work. They'll be more satisfied at home. And I think that we are going to see a much freer way of working, where it'll be a more entrepreneurial way, even in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that that's where we're going. And I think that it's not just going to be top down pushing command. I think it's going to be really people finding more purpose in what they do and more reward in how they do it. And I'm very excited about the opportunities to come, and very excited to be a part of the change that we want to see. And I know that CEOs are very open to wanting to move in that direction. And I'm pretty excited about the opportunities to come, especially for women.
Lisa, before I let you ask the last question, I just have one more thing, Shelley, because if we go back to the beginning of this conversation when Lisa brought up these numbers, right? And the huge pay gap that's currently out there. You have so many women that mentor each other. You mentor women all the time. What do you say? What is something that you give to women as an advice at any level of employment who are negotiating their salary? Like, what is maybe an action item everybody here can take from today when they don't feel treated and paid equally? What is something, a formula that you have seen work and that you pass on to others?
First of all, we're seeing a lot of new laws and regulations with pay transparency. So that's going to go a long way with equal pay. So that's fantastic. But, a lot of women have that imposter syndrome of that voice in their head of, that they're not worth it and I'm not this and I'm not that. And first of all, men have the same one, but men just ignore that voice. And so one of the things that we tell all women is you just got to shut that bitch up in your head. My girlfriend, Wendy Clark, the CEO of Dentsu, says that you just got to shut that bitch up. So you ignore that voice because that voice is wrong. Believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. So you are as important, if not more important, to your counterpart. So know your value, know your worth, number one. So go in and just understand that whatever you think they're paying you, And, I did something. I'm just going to tell you how I negotiated for myself, because this was actually probably the smartest thing I ever did. When I sold my company to a very large company, they asked me what I wanted my salary, my compensation to be. And I was the CEO of my own company, and now I sold my company. Like, how am I supposed to know? And I remember saying to the lawyer of the company, I said, well, I don't know. I said, we have two choices. Do you want me to go out and ask my counterparts, at other companies how much they're getting paid? Or, I'll leave it up to you. I said, all I don't want more or less. What is everyone else at my level in the company making? I just want to get paid the same. So it's not my job to tell you what I'm supposed to get paid. I'm putting it on you. And I said, just pay me the same as you're paying everyone at my level. So I put it on them. So I thought that was a very fair exercise. So she came back to me and she said, you now are the highest paid of everyone at your level. And I said, why is that? She said, well, I went and looked. You made me feel responsible for you. So I went back and I looked at every other, top of the 10 in the company, and someone had a higher salary. So I matched that. Someone else had a better bonus package. So I matched that. And someone else had better equity. So I matched that. So and I said, well, thank you. I said, if someone gets a raise, will you let me know? And so I just put it back on them. So I think that's a great way to negotiate. Just tell the person that you want the same level, and you'll ensure yourself getting the same package. So I thought that was a great way to negotiate.
Fantastic. What a great advice. Thank you. And Lisa, I'm looking at you as we're getting against the hour. What is something that you took from the hour today?
What's something that I took away? That I've just been thinking the right things, and that it's validating to see another woman doing the work, saying the same things, because sometimes we go into these places solo and have everybody looking at us like, nah, it's always going to be this way. And it's like, nope. So you got another person in Chicago doing the work and walking the walk, in that I operate how I want the world to work as a workplace. So that's really it. I'm very validated by this conversation. And I can't continue to make my own rules like I've been doing, no matter who it rubs up against. I got to do what I got to do to thrive and live my best life.
And I want to say something for Lisa, because, when I was a mom and, everyone would say, oh, you can't go pick up carpool, or you can't go get your kids because you're going to be dinged. Where in the handbook does anyone say you can't leave the office to go get your kids at 3:00? There is nothing. We just have these expectations that you can't. But I want to tell all of you out there, I have a no regret policy. And my no regret policy is I never want to look back in life and say shoulda, woulda, coulda. And I always would think forward and say, if I am going to feel bad that I'm going to miss an important moment in my life, I never did it. And nobody ever is going to remember the meeting that you missed or the trip that you didn't take. But the important things in your personal life, you will always remember. If you didn't do it, you will feel bad. And the people that you were there for will always remember that. So never miss a moment that matters, because I promise you, there is nobody in your professional life that will ever remember that you missed a meeting later in life. Nobody. So you don't miss your pickup at 3:00. There is nothing in a handbook. We think that there is, but there isn't.
Yep.
So for all of you people out there that think you're not allowed to pick up your child at 3:00, you are sadly mistaken. Nobody is telling you not to go pick up your children. You will not get fired. Pick up your children.
Says Shelley Zalis, the CEO of Female Quotient, our amazing guest for today. This hour went by like a second, Shelley, and I'm so excited that we hopefully can continue inviting the amazing women in your community to our space and share our communities together. So glad for all of your comments today, your questions. We really appreciate that. And Shelley, you're a true rock star. We hope to see you on March 23rd when you pull off this amazing event. And for today, I'm just going to say thank you both. Truly honored. And thank you all for taking the time today. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.